Every morning of my life begins the same way, with the quiet creak of the floorboards and the dim light coming through the blinds. 77 is the age when you don't need an alarm clock. The body wakes up with the first rays of the sun, like an old mechanism programmed for a certain time. I, Edmund Holbrook, rise from a bed that has been half empty for 5 years. Loretta left suddenly. A heart attack took her while I was at the store. I came back with a bag of groceries and she was lying on the kitchen floor. I've learned to live alone since then, but I still turn to her in the morning as if she might answer. "Good morning, Lori." My voice sounds inappropriately loud in the empty bedroom. Sometimes I think the neighbors, if they listened, would think old man Holbrook had lost his mind. But I don't care. At my age, it doesn't matter so much what other people think anymore. Loretta's bedroom was almost exactly the same as it was when she was here. I didn't put her things away like Priscilla had advised. "Dad, you need to move on." Where am I supposed to move at 77? I'm already moving slowly but inexorably toward the same line Loretta crossed. I go down to the kitchen and put the kettle on. My breakfast is simple: oatmeal with raisins, toast with peanut butter, a cup of tea. Loretta always made us scrambled eggs and vegetables on weekends, but I didn't inherit her culinary talents, and cooking for myself alone is a dull endeavor. At breakfast, I look at the picture on the kitchen table of Loretta and me on our 40-year anniversary. I'm still black-haired, but my temples are silver. Right now, my head resembles a snow globe. Loretta laughs, snuggling up to me in her blue dress that I've always loved. She was a beautiful woman until the end. The phone rings, snapping me out of my reverie. My daughter's name pops up on the screen. "Good morning, Priscilla." "Daddy, are you eating breakfast already?" Her voice has the usual businesslike quality. Priscilla's always like that, hurried, hurrying, like someone's chasing her. "Yeah, the usual." "Listen, Douglas and I want you to come over for dinner on Sunday. We need to have a serious talk about the future. That's it. Have a serious talk about the future. It's a phrase I've been hearing a lot lately, and for some reason it always means talking about my house. What kind of future, Pris? She sighs on the other end of the line. I can almost see her rolling her eyes, a gesture she's had since she was a teenager. "Daddy, let's not talk on the phone. Come over Sunday by 6 o'clock at night, okay? I'll make your favorite lasagna. Lasagna is Loretta's specialty, not Priscilla's, but I'm not going to correct her." "Okay, I will. And Daddy, why don't you go see Dr. Shepard after all? You haven't had a checkup in a while." "I'm healthy as an ox, Pris. That's what all bulls say until they have a heart attack." Our conversation ends, as usual, with her admonishing me. She hangs up and I'm left with cold oatmeal and a premonition of an unpleasant conversation. After breakfast, I go out into the garden. Our house in Newtown isn't luxurious, but it's spacious, with a small lot. Loretta and I bought it when I was promoted at the factory. 30 years ago, paid off the last mortgage payment. It was the day we opened the bottle of champagne we'd been saving for a special occasion. The garden is a bit neglected. Loretta used to grow roses here, but now I only keep it in basic order, mowing the lawn, trimming the bushes. On the terrace is an old bench where we used to sit in the evenings. I sit on it, watching the neighbor's cat, which sneaks along the fence. The sound of a car pulling up distracts me from my thoughts. Sebastian's silver sedan pulls up in front of the house. My son always chooses cars that look more expensive than he can afford. "Hey, Dad!" Sebastian waves as he gets out of the car. He's always looked more like me than Priscilla. The same dark eyes, the same chin line. But he wasn't my type. "I thought I'd come and see you." "Unexpected," I said, rising from the bench. "Usually you call a week in advance." Sebastian smiles strainedly. "I was in the neighborhood for work. I thought I'd drop in on the old man." We go into the house. Sebastian looks around as if assessing the state of the interior. His gaze lingers on the antique clock in the living room, a gift from my father. "Coffee?" I offer. That would be nice. While I make coffee, my son walks around the kitchen, looking at the pictures on the walls. When was the last time you redecorated, Dad? With your mom. Why? No reason, I'm just asking. The house needs maintenance. I put a cup of coffee in front of him. The house is fine. I check it regularly. Sure, he agrees quickly, taking a sip of his coffee. It's just, at your age. At my age, people are still capable of taking care of themselves and their homes, I interrupt him. How's work going? Sebastian's face changes instantly. Work is a sore subject. He's in his 5th year as CFO of a company that's always teetering on the brink of bankruptcy. Actually, Dad, we're having a little trouble. Temporary, of course. What kind of difficulties? I ask, even though I already know the answer. Financial. You see, a client has delayed a large payment and we need to close the quarter. I was thinking, that's it, the real reason for the visit. How much, Seb? He looks a little embarrassed, but only a little. 3,000. A month tops. As soon as the client pays, I'll pay it back. I don't remind him of the 2 weeks maximum last time, which stretched into 6 months, or the 2,000 he borrowed for urgent car repairs and never paid back. Okay, I say, getting up from the table. I'll get it. You're the best, Dad, Sebastian exclaims with relief. I knew I could count on you. I go up to the bedroom where I keep the cash in the top drawer of the dresser. I take 3,000 out of the envelope I have set aside for emergencies. Unforeseen expenses have become too predictable lately. Back in the kitchen, I hand the money to my son. He quickly counts it and stashes it in his wallet. Thanks, Dad. I'll pay you back at the end of the month, I promise. We both know it's not true, but we maintain the illusion. By the way, Priscilla called, I say. She's inviting me to dinner on Sunday. Do you know what she wants to talk about? Sebastian looks away, a sure sign he's hiding something. I have no idea. Maybe she just missed you. Your sister's not the type to throw a pity dinner. Family stuff. He's nervously looking at his watch. Oh, I gotta go. The meeting's in 40 minutes. I walk my son to the door. He hugs me goodbye, quickly, formally. Take care of yourself, Dad. And think about hiring someone to work in the garden. It looks a little neglected. As his car disappears around the corner, I head back into the house. In the living room, I stop in front of a picture of all 4 of us. Me, Loretta, little Priscilla, and teenage Sebastian. A happy family. When did things change? When did the kids stop seeing me as a father and start seeing me as a wallet on legs or a burden? In the evening, after dinner, I pull out my financial folder. I have always been careful in money matters. A habit developed over the years of living from paycheck to paycheck until I reached the senior engineer at the factory. I look at my bank statements and calculate my savings. My pension is enough for everyday expenses, and my savings are enough for emergencies and to help my children. If I'm honest with myself, even with all the loans Sebastian never repays, I have enough money for many more years of peaceful living. The house is fully paid off. The utility bills are not that high, and my health is still good enough to get by without expensive medical treatment. But the children seem to think otherwise. I see impatience in their eyes, as if they are counting the days until I pass away, when they will be able to inherit. This house, these savings, these things that hold the memory of years gone by, to them, they are all just assets that can be converted into money. I close the folder and put it back in my desk drawer. I turn off the lights and sit in the darkness of the living room, listening to the ticking of the old clock. It used to be a soothing sound, reminding me of my childhood at my parents' house. Now, each tick feels like it's counting down the time they're trying to take away from me. I go up to the bedroom and say goodnight to Loretta as usual, looking at her picture on the bedside table. Sometimes I think she was happier than I was. She didn't have to see what our children grew up to be. But then I chastise myself for thinking that. They are our children after all, even if they are only interested in my money, not my life. Saturday was surprisingly warm for the beginning of fall. I decided to take advantage of the good weather and tidy up the garden. The old lawnmower, which I had fixed 10 times already, started on the third try, and soon the smell of freshly cut grass filled the air. Working in the garden always calmed me down. Loretta said I had the hands of an engineer. I could fix anything from a leaky faucet to a broken TV. After 2 hours of work, I leaned the rake against the wall of the house and rubbed the sweat off my forehead. Despite my age, physical labor was still satisfying. My back was hurting faster than before, though. "It looks great, Edmund." I turned around. Howard Page, my neighbor on my right, was standing by the fence leaning on his cane. Howard is 82, and he's lived in his house even longer than I've lived in mine. "Hey, Howard, how's the knee?" "It's creaking like an unlubricated hinge," he grinned. "But the doctor says I'm still in a pickle for my age." I walked over to the fence. Howard and I weren't close friends, but we had the kind of neighborly rapport that was less and less common now. "Would you like some tea?" I was just about to take a break. "I'd love one." We settled down on the terrace with cups of tea. Howard ate a piece of apple pie I had bought at the bakery on the corner. "Delicious," he said, licking his fork. Loretta baked better, of course, but it was okay. Loretta did everything better, I agreed. Howard nodded understandingly. His wife had died the year before Loretta, so we both knew what it was like to be alone after decades of marriage. "By the way, I saw your daughter the other day," he said suddenly, sipping his tea. "Priscilla? She came to see me?" No, she was with some people. They were walking around your house, talking about something. I thought you knew." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "When was this?" "Wednesday, I think." "Yeah, it was Wednesday. I was just getting the mail when I saw them. 2 men in suits and your Priscilla." She was showing them something on the front. "And you're sure they didn't go inside?" "Positive. I would have noticed." "They walked around the house for about 20 minutes and then they left. Thought maybe you were renovating or something." I shook my head. "I wasn't planning any renovations." Howard, noticing my concern, changed the subject, and we talked for another hour or so about the city news and how Newtown was changing. But my thoughts were far away. Why was Priscilla bringing strangers to look at my house? And why didn't she tell me about it? When Howard left, I immediately dialed my daughter's number. She didn't answer right away. "Daddy? Is something wrong?" I could hear a slight irritation in her voice, as if I'd distracted her from something important. "Priscilla, did you bring some people to my house on Wednesday?" A pause, short but noticeable. "What are you talking about?" "Howard saw you with 2 men in suits. You were checking out the house from the outside." "Oh, that!" Her voice became carefree. "Yes, I was showing the house to my friend Elaine and her husband. They're looking for something similar in our neighborhood, and I just wanted to give them an idea of the layout. I'm sorry I didn't tell you." "You could have brought them inside if you wanted to show them the layout," I pointed out. "I didn't want to bother you, Dad. You weren't home." "I wasn't in the store more than an hour." "Look, I don't see what the problem is." She sounded defensive. "I was just helping a friend. It's not a crime." "Of course it's not a crime. It's just weird that you didn't mention it." "Oh my God, Dad. Do I have to account for everything I do? I'm 38 years old." "You're 48, Priscilla," I corrected her. "And it's not about the reports. It's about the fact that this is my house and I don't like it being looked at without my knowledge." "You're getting paranoid," she sighed. "Look, I've got to run. I'll see you tomorrow for dinner, okay?" She hung up before I could answer. I stood there with the phone in my hand, feeling like I had just been lied to. Priscilla had never had a friend named Elaine. At least, she'd never mentioned one. I spent the rest of the day in vague anxiety. Before going to bed, I decided to check the mail and discovered a Sunny Harbor nursing home flyer. Glossy photos of smiling seniors in neat rooms, catchy headlines about comfort and care. I didn't remember requesting such information. threw the booklet in the trash, and went to bed with a heavy feeling. Sunday morning began with rain. Gray clouds covered the sky, and the drops drummed on the roof with monotonous persistence. The weather matched my mood perfectly. I didn't want to go to this dinner, anticipating an unpleasant conversation, but it was too late to cancel. After breakfast, I decided to do a little work in the garage to fix an old radio I'd found in the attic. Fiddling with machinery always helped me clear my head. I was absorbed in my work when the phone rang. My son's name popped up on the screen. "Hi, Sebastian." "Hi, Dad. How are you?" His voice sounded unusually cheerful. "I'm okay. I'm fixing an old radio." "Still fiddling with your gears," he said with a condescending smile. "Listen, you're going to Pris's for dinner tonight, aren't you?" "Yeah, 6 o'clock." "That's great. I'll be there too. Thought maybe I could give you a ride. I'm just passing through anyway." It was weird. Sebastian had never offered me a ride before, even though he knew I still drove. "Thanks, but I'll drive myself. I like to be independent." "Are you sure? It's raining today. The roads are slippery." "Sebastian, I've been driving longer than you've been alive. I'll manage somehow." All right. He gave up too soon. "By the way, Dad, I've been thinking. Have you ever thought about moving into a smaller apartment?" "Oh, here we go. I knew something was wrong." "Why would I think about it? I'm perfectly happy in my house. It's just, it's so big for one person. It takes so much effort and money to maintain. An apartment would be easier. No gardening, less cleaning." "I like gardening," I said, "and I'm good at cleaning." "Of course you are," he agreed hastily. "I just thought it might be more practical. Besides, it's on a nice lot. Real estate prices are booming in Newtown, and you could make a nice profit. I'm not going to sell the house, Sebastian." "No one's talking about selling right now." His voice turned honeyed. "Just keep that possibility in mind. Life changes. Circumstances change." "My circumstances haven't changed," I said firmly. "I've lived in this house for 40 years, and I intend to stay here for the rest of my life." All right. Whatever you say." He backed off again a little too easily. "Okay, Dad, I gotta go. I'll see you tonight." Hanging up the phone, I put my tools away. My appetite for work was gone. Too much was becoming clear. Priscilla wasn't bringing friends to the house, but potential buyers or appraisers. She and Sebastian were clearly plotting something behind my back. I stepped out of the garage and headed into the house. The rain had intensified into a downpour. Soaking wet in the few seconds it took me to get to the porch, I stopped in the hallway, looking at my house through the eyes of an outsider. Yeah, it's not new. The wallpaper in the hallway is a little faded. The hardwood floors have lost their luster in places, and there's a stain on the ceiling in the corner of the living room from that leak 3 years ago. But this is my house. Every single thing here holds memories. It's where I remember Priscilla taking her first steps, holding onto the edge of the couch. Sebastian breaking his arm sliding down the stair railing when he was 8. How Loretta and I celebrated anniversaries, birthdays, Christmas. I walked to the living room and sank into my chair. Anger and resentment fought within me with fatigue. Are my children so fixated on money that they are willing to evict their own father from his home? Or did they really think they were doing it for my good? The time until evening stretched agonizingly slow. I tried to distract myself by reading, but the words wouldn't form sentences. In the end, I decided to go to the supermarket early. I wanted to buy a bottle of wine for dinner, though I doubted it would be a pleasant evening. The Food Mart supermarket was not crowded on a Sunday afternoon. I was wandering between the aisles, looking at the wine bottles, when I heard a familiar voice. "Edmund? Edmund Holbrook, is that you?" Turning around, I saw Winston Price, my former colleague from the factory. We'd worked together for almost 20 years before Winston decided to change careers after the layoffs. He went to law school, specializing in probate law and wills. Now he has his own small practice. "Winston, long time. We shook hands. Winston looked good, always trim, neatly dressed with a perfectly trimmed gray beard. It's been forever, he smiled. How are you? Alive and well, and what else do you need at my age? That's right. I went to visit my grandchildren. They live 2 blocks away. I'm on my way home now. We walked together to the cash register. I got a bottle of red wine. Winston got a bag of coffee and fresh bread. Why don't we get coffee at that coffee shop across the street? He suggested. If you're not in a hurry, of course. I glanced at my watch. There was still plenty of time before dinner. I'd love to. We sat by the window in the small cafe. The rain was still pouring, drumming on the canopy above the entrance. Winston ordered us 2 Americanos. How's Loretta? He asked, and then hesitated when he saw the look on my face. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know. 5 years ago, I said quietly. Heart attack. I'm sorry, man. She was a wonderful woman. We were silent for a moment, paying our respects. Then the conversation drifted to a safer direction. About former colleagues, about how the city had changed, about politics. How are your kids? Winston asked. Priscilla and Sebastian, right? Yes, I paused. They're fine. Priscilla's a realtor. Sebastian's the CFO of some office. Winston looked at me carefully. But something's bothering you, I can tell. I sighed. Winston had always been perceptive. To be honest, yes. I think they're trying to convince me to sell the house. Oh, yeah? And you don't want to do that? Of course I don't. It's my house, Winston. It's Loretta's and mine. Every corner of it holds memories. He nodded understandingly. How do they present it? Oh, very thoughtful, I said sarcastically. The house is too big for one person. It takes a lot of effort to maintain, and I'd be much more comfortable in a small apartment. That's a standard argument, Winston snorted. I hear them all the time in my practice. The worst part is that they go behind my back. Priscilla had already brought some people to look at the house, and when I asked her, she lied that they were friends. Winston frowned. I don't want to upset you, Ed, but in my practice I often encounter situations like this. Children often think they know best what their elderly parents need. Or they just want their share of the inheritance, I added grimly. It happens, unfortunately. I watched the raindrops drip down the glass and felt oddly relieved that I'd finally shared my concerns with someone who understood. Going to their house for dinner tonight, I said. I suspect that's what the conversation will be about. Be firm, Ed. This is your home, your life. Don't let them pressure you. I won't, I nodded. But it's frustrating to know that your own children see you as nothing more than a nuisance or a source of inheritance. Winston finished his coffee and looked me in the eye. If you need legal advice or just the advice of an old friend, call any time. He pulled out a business card and handed it to me. Here are my contacts. I took the card, feeling grateful for this unexpected conversation. Maybe I wasn't as lonely as I thought. Thank you, Winston. I really do. We said goodbye outside the cafe. The rain had eased a little, turning into a drizzle. I got into the car, putting the bottle of wine on the passenger seat, and looked at my watch. It was 3 hours until dinner, but anxiety was already twisting my stomach. Priscilla's house was in a new neighborhood in Newtown, where all the buildings looked like they'd stepped off the cover of a design magazine modern, with big windows and manicured lawns. I parked my old Ford between my brother-in-law's gleaming SUV and some unfamiliar car that must have been Sebastian's. My time-worn but still reliable car looked like a poor relative at a royal reception here. Before I got out of the car, I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down. Ever since this morning, I'd had a nagging feeling of an unpleasant conversation. The last time Priscilla had organized a family dinner, she had announced her divorce from her first husband. I wonder what she was going to announce today. Although after talking to Sebastian and seeing Winston, I was already guessing. Grabbing a bottle of wine from the passenger seat, I headed toward the 2-story house with the dark brick facade. As soon as I got to the front porch, the door opened. Daddy, finally! Priscilla smiled, but I could see the tension in her eyes. She was dressed in an expensive ivory dress, her hair styled, her makeup flawless. My daughter was always eager to impress. We were beginning to worry. I glanced at my watch. It was 6 o'clock sharp. "I'm right on time, Pris." Sure. Come on in." She took the bottle of wine from me. "Oh, Cabernet. That's nice." The others were already gathered in the spacious living room, the kitchen. Douglas, Priscilla's husband, a tall man with balding hair and a perpetually tired expression, was lounging at the law firm, lazily stirring something in his glass. Sebastian was sitting on the couch with his phone in his hands, but he got up hurriedly when I arrived. "Hi, Dad." He hugged me tightly, and I caught the scent of expensive cologne. "How was your trip?" "No adventures," I answered. "Hello, Douglas." My son-in-law took his hand from his glass and shook it. "It's good to see you, Edmund. You look great." It was an obvious lie. I hadn't seen Douglas in over 6 months, and in that time I'd gotten wrinkles and lost some more hair. But in their family, politeness was always valued above the truth. "Where are the children?" I asked, not seeing my grandchildren. "Oh, Elliot's at soccer practice, and Daisy stayed the night at a friend's house," Priscilla answered quickly. "Sit down, Daddy. Dinner's almost ready." "Douglas, get Daddy a drink." I didn't like the grandchildren not being home. Priscilla usually insisted on their presence at family dinners. This only confirmed my suspicions. There was a conversation planned for which the children's ears were not meant. Douglas poured me a whiskey and soda, though I preferred beer. I didn't bother to correct him. "So, how was your week?" Sebastian asked, sitting down across from me. "What did you do?" "The usual stuff. Worked in the garden, fixed things. By the way, I met Winston Price today, remember him?" "The one from the factory?" Sebastian frowned. "I vaguely remember him. The tall one with the beard?" "That's right. How is he?" "He's good. He's practicing law now, specializing in inheritance law." I noticed Sebastian glance at Priscilla, who was taking lasagna out of the oven. "Interesting," he said. "What were you two talking about?" "This and that," I said evasively. We were reminiscing about old times. Priscilla put the steaming dish on the table. "Dinner's ready. Douglas, open Dad's wine, please." We sat down at the table. The lasagna did smell appetizing, though not as Loretta had made it. The first few minutes of dinner passed in awkward silence. Everyone ate without lifting their eyes from their plates. Only Sebastian occasionally glanced at his sister as if waiting for a signal. "Papa, how is your health?" Priscilla finally asked, blotting her lips with a napkin. "How long have you been to the doctor?" "Last month. Dr. Shepard said I was in great shape for my age." "But your heart? Blood pressure?" she insisted. "It's within normal limits for someone my age." I sipped my wine. "Thank you for your concern, but I'm fine." "How are you doing with the house?" Sebastian chimed in. "It's big and you're alone." Here we go, I thought. "I'm doing fine. It's not Buckingham Palace after all." "But you must admit, Dad, at your age, it's tiring to look after such a big house," Priscilla continued. "The cleaning, the repairs, the garden. It's a lot of work." "I like gardening," I said firmly. "And I'm not a helpless old man. As long as I can hold my tools, I'll keep my house in order." Priscilla and Sebastian looked at each other. Douglas was studiously studying the pattern on his plate, clearly unwilling to participate in the conversation. "No one's saying you're helpless," Sebastian said softly. "It's just that we're worried about you. You're 77 years old, Dad. What if you fall and there's no one to help you?" "I have a phone and neighbors. Howard Page stops by every day to make sure I'm alive." I smiled, but no one appreciated the joke. "Dad, it's not funny," Priscilla frowned. "Sebastian and I have given this a lot of thought, and we think you'd be much better off in an apartment, smaller, more modern, with a concierge, an elevator, and all the amenities." "What's going to happen to my house?" I asked her bluntly, looking her in the eye. She was a little embarrassed. Well, it could be sold. There's a very good real estate market right now. Your house could fetch a decent sum, especially considering its location. Part of the money would go to buy an apartment and the rest you could put into an account or split it between the two of you, I finished for her. Daddy, you're not being fair, Priscilla exclaimed. We're thinking of your welfare. Are you? I put my fork down. Then why were you bringing potential buyers to my house behind my back? There was silence in the room. Douglas choked on his wine. Yeah, I didn't, Priscilla began, but she faltered under my gaze. Okay, they were clients, but I just wanted to know the approximate cost in case you agreed. It's called pre-market research. Didn't you think to ask me if I wanted to sell the house in the first place? We knew you would resist, Sebastian interjected. You're attached to the house. That's understandable. But sometimes you have to face the truth. You're getting older, Dad. Keeping a house is getting more and more burdensome. And financially, too. My finances are just fine, I said. I have enough pension and savings to live comfortably in my own home for the rest of my life. But think about the future, Priscilla insisted. What if you need expensive medical treatment or constant care? Selling the house now is the sensible thing to do. You'll be relieved of the burden of its upkeep and you'll have a financial safety cushion. And at the same time, you'll get your share of the inheritance during my lifetime. I couldn't hold back the bitterness in my voice. How can you say that? Priscilla raised her voice. We are your children. We love you and want only the best for you. Then respect my decision. I'm not going to sell the house. It means so much more to me than just a roof over my head. It's where your mother and I built a life, where you grew up, where every corner holds memories. Memories, memories! Priscilla splashed her hands. You can't live only in memories, Papa. You have to look forward. I am looking forward, and I see myself in my own house, not in some faceless apartment you want to shove me into to free my hands. Sebastian sighed. Dad, no one wants to fight. We're just suggesting an option that seems reasonable to us. After all, it's your decision. Exactly, I said firmly, and I've decided to stay in my house. Priscilla tapped her nails nervously on the table. Dad, be realistic. The house needs constant investment. The roof leaks, the heating system is old, the windows need replacing. As a realtor, I know how much it's going to cost to fix it up. The roof is not leaking. I had it inspected last month. The heating is working fine. I maintain it myself. As for the windows, yes, they are old, but they are functional. But they're not energy efficient, Priscilla exclaimed. You spend a lot of money on heating in the winter, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Do you have any idea how much it costs to maintain a house now? I sipped my wine calmly. I do. About $1,200 a month, including utilities, taxes, and insurance. My pension and the interest on my savings cover that cost with a reserve. Right now, yes, Douglas intervened, suddenly deciding to support his wife. But prices are going up. Property taxes in Newtown have gone up 15% in the last 3 years. Utility rates aren't going up either. So what are you offering? A condo in some Sunnyside senior center? I wasn't being sarcastic. I've seen those places. Sterile corridors, a communal dining room with hospital-style food and rooms the size of closets. You're unfair. Priscilla was indignant again. Modern senior housing complexes are very comfortable, with swimming pools, gyms, cultural programs. If you mean Sunny Harbor, I've seen their advertising brochure. Strangely enough, it ended up in my mail. Do you know how it got there? Priscilla blushed, but quickly pulled herself together. I thought you might be interested in reading the options, but Sunny Harbor isn't the only option. There are wonderful senior condominiums where everyone lives independently but still gets the support they need. I don't need support. I'm completely independent. Right now, Sebastian sighed. But time passes, Dad. None of us are getting any younger. And that's why you've decided to start dividing up my property while I'm alive? I looked at both kids. Tell me honestly, do you need the money from the sale of the house that badly? Priscilla and Sebastian exchanged guilty looks. It's not just the money, Sebastian began uncertainly. Although I'm not going to hide it, I'm in a bad place financially. The company is on the verge of bankruptcy, and if it closes, it will be hard for me to find a new job at my age. And we have mortgages and loans for the children's education, Priscilla said. Elliot wants to go to a private college, and that costs a fortune. So you want to solve your financial problems by selling my house, I summarized. No, not exactly, Priscilla protested. We do care about you, but if you can help your children and grandchildren a little, what's wrong with that? After all, we'll inherit the house someday anyway. That's it. The truth at last. So you just don't want to wait until I die to get your share, I said slowly. Daddy, how can you? Priscilla jumped up from her seat. We don't want you dead. We just, you want me to be practical, I finished for her. Sell the house, buy a smaller apartment, split the difference between you two, and we'd all be happy, wouldn't we? You, money for your expenses, me, a cozy place where I can quietly wait for the end. You're exaggerating, Priscilla exclaimed. We are talking about reality. We're talking about practicality. We're talking about what's best for everyone. For everyone but me, I shook my head. I'm not selling the house. That's my final answer. Priscilla turned red. You're just a stubborn egomaniac. You always have been. You don't care about your children or your grandchildren. You only think about yourself. I looked at her silently, not recognizing in this angry woman my little girl, whom I had once taught to ride a bike. Do you know how much it costs to run this damn house now? She was almost shouting. Not 1,200, but much more. With future repairs, new appliances, rising taxes, it's tens of thousands a year. She pounded her fist on the table. You want to live here? Pay $10,000 a month. That's how much your stubbornness will cost. There was a deafening silence in the room. Even Douglas, normally unperturbed, looked at his wife with shock. The figure was so absurdly exaggerated that I didn't even question it. I rose slowly from the table, folded my napkin neatly next to my plate. Thanks for dinner. Dad, wait, that's not what Pris meant. Sebastian tried to correct the situation. I silently headed for the exit. I heard hurried footsteps behind me. Dad, don't go like that. Priscilla grabbed my arm. I was just overreacting. Let's talk calmly. I gently released my hand from her grip. We have nothing more to talk about, Priscilla. You've made your position clear. I've made mine. But Daddy, I stepped out onto the porch. The evening air was cool and fresh after the rain of the day. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. A normal Sunday evening in Newtown. At least let Sebastian take you home, Priscilla said, almost pleadingly as she followed me out. I'd rather walk, I answered without turning around. It's a nice evening. Without waiting for further objection, I followed the path to the wicket. I heard Priscilla calling to Douglas and Sebastian behind me, probably to give chase, but I didn't care. I walked as fast as my old legs would allow and soon found myself on the main street. Priscilla's house was about 3 kilometers from mine. Not close, but not so far that a healthy person couldn't walk. And I, despite my age, had always walked a lot and was in good physical shape. Newtown was quiet and peaceful in the evening. Store windows glowed with warm light, cafes played soft music, and people strolled leisurely along the sidewalks. I walked, breathing deeply and trying to calm down. My daughter's words were still ringing in my ears. You want to live here? Pay $10,000. Absurd, of course. It wasn't worth $10,000 a month to keep the house. But it wasn't about the numbers. It was about how easily my children had decided to get rid of me. It was like I wasn't a father, but an old piece of furniture that needed to go to the dump. I walked past the city park as it started to get dark. I sat down on a bench to rest a bit and gather my thoughts. On a nearby bench, A young couple was feeding pigeons. They were laughing and occasionally exchanging kisses. Loretta and I were once like that, young, carefree, in love. Loretta, what would she have said when she saw how our children had grown up? She was always softer with me, able to find excuses for their actions. "They're just taking care of you in their own way," she'd say. But even Loretta couldn't justify talking to me today. I pulled my cell phone out of my pocket. It was a little after 8 in the evening, not too late to make a call. I found Winston's name in my contacts and pressed call. He answered after the third ringtone. "Edmund? Is something wrong?" "Winston, sorry to call you so late. You're not busy?" "No, just reading a book. What is it?" "Remember our conversation this afternoon? You were right. My kids really want me to sell the house." "I take it the conversation didn't go well?" "That's putting it mildly," I grinned bitterly. "Priscilla practically kicked me out when I refused." I told him briefly about the dinner. Winston listened without interrupting. "So where are you now?" he asked when I was done. "In the park. I thought I'd walk home, clear my head." "Do you want me to drive up? I can give you a ride." "No, thanks. I need some time to think." "I understand." His voice sounded sympathetic. "Ed, I have to ask, are you sure you want to stay in your house no matter what?" "Absolutely," I answered without hesitation. "This is my home, Winston, and I'm not going to let the kids run me out of it." "In that case, you might want to think about legal protection. I've seen situations like this in my practice. Sometimes kids get, persistent." "What do you mean?" "Well, for example, they might try to argue that you're incapacitated and can't make decisions for yourself, especially if your house is of significant value." I felt a chill run down my spine. Could my kids really go through with this? "What do you suggest?" "First of all, review the will. Make sure your wishes are clearly stated and legally protected. It might also be worth considering a power of attorney in the event of incapacity, appointing someone you trust to make decisions for you if you are unable to." "You, for example?" I asked. "If you want to. I'd be happy to help." I hesitated. A serious step, but after tonight I knew I needed to protect myself. "Okay, Winston. Let's meet this week and discuss the details." "Great. Come by my office on Wednesday, say 10 a.m.? "Okay." We said our goodbyes, and I put my phone back in my pocket. The evening was getting cooler, and I decided it was time to move on. Getting up from the bench, I headed toward the house, mulling over my conversation with Winston. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe the kids really do care about me, just expressing it clumsily. But the more I thought about the look on Priscilla's face when she'd yelled about the 10,000, the less I believed in their good intentions. They saw me only as a hindrance to their plans and the source of an inheritance they couldn't wait to receive. I woke up at first light as usual, but today I felt wrecked. The events of last night were swirling around in my head, making it hard to gather my thoughts. The long walk home after dinner at Priscilla's had exhausted me physically, and the emotional strain had worn me out mentally. I lay staring at the ceiling and realized that my relationship with my children would never be the same again. "What do you think about that, Lori?" I asked quietly, turning to the empty half of the bed. "Our kids want to get rid of me." My voice sounded cracked and lonely in the morning silence of the house. Of course, Loretta didn't answer, but I could almost imagine what she would have said. "Don't make any hasty decisions, Ed. Cool down first." But I'd already made up my mind. Yesterday's conversation with Winston in the park was the deciding factor. If my kids are so fixated on my inheritance that they're willing to run me out of my own house, maybe they shouldn't get the inheritance at all. I got up, showered, and went down to the kitchen. Despite my depressed mood, habit demanded a regimen. I made tea, made toast, got jam from the pantry. Actions repeated 1,000 times were soothing. After breakfast, I opened the large wooden chest in the living room where the family albums and documents were kept. Beneath a stack of old photographs was a worn leather folder, my will, drawn up while Loretta was still alive and updated after her death. According to it, the house and all my savings would be divided equally between Priscilla and Sebastian when I died. I flipped through the pages, remembering how Loretta and I had discussed each clause, wanting to be fair to both children. We believed we were raising decent people who would value the values we were trying to instill in them rather than the material inheritance. How wrong we were. Putting the folder aside, I pulled out my cell phone and dialed Winston's office number. His secretary confirmed our appointment for Wednesday at 10 a.m., and I was relieved. At least I had a plan of action. There were 2 days left until Wednesday, which I spent in a strange state of suspense. Sebastian called twice, first apologizing for Priscilla's behavior, then trying to bring up the subject of selling the house again, but more gently. I was polite, but adamant. Priscilla didn't call at all, which didn't surprise me. Pride had always been her chief fault. On Wednesday morning, I put on my best suit, the same one I'd worn at Loretta's funeral. It was hanging in a case in the far corner of my closet, and the smell of mothballs reminded me of that sad day. Strangely, I felt a similar grief today, as if I were burying not a person, but a relationship that had turned out to be an illusion. Winston's office was in a small 2-story building in the business section of Newtown. Price and Associates, Legal Services, read the modest sign on the door. It was quiet and solid inside, dark wood paneling on the walls, cushioned chairs in the reception area, the dim light of desk lamps. A young secretary, seeing me, smiled. "Mr. Holbrook? Mr. Price is waiting for you. Please come in." Winston met me in his office, a spacious room with a large window overlooking the town square. He looked absolutely professional in his dark gray suit and neatly trimmed beard. "Edmund, good to see you." He shook my hand firmly. "How are you after Sunday's incident?" "I've been better," I admitted, sinking into the chair across from his desk. "I understand. It's not a pleasant situation." Winston opened his laptop. "So you want to change the will?" "Yes, completely." He raised his eyebrows slightly. "Have you thought it through? It's best not to make these decisions on emotion." "I've been thinking about it for 2 days, Winston. The more I thought about it, the more I was convinced it was the right decision." He nodded. "Good. Tell me what changes you'd like to make." I pulled a piece of paper from my inside jacket pocket and sketched out the main points. I want to exclude my children, Priscilla Baxter and Sebastian Holbrook, from my will, completely. Winston showed no surprise, but made a notation on the piece of paper. "That's your right. And to whom do you wish to leave the property?" "To his brother, Alfred Holbrook." Now Winston was really surprised. "Alfred? I thought you hadn't spoken to him in years." "We haven't," I sighed. "We'd had a fight almost 30 years ago over our parents' inheritance. A stupid fight that I regret now. But 2 years ago, I found him through social media and we started to communicate little by little. First in letters, then on the phone. I even went to visit him at Greystone last year. How's he doing?" Modestly. Alfred was never financially successful. He was a school teacher all his life, now retired. Lives in a small apartment on the outskirts of Greystone. But you know what I realized when I met him for the first time in years? He's happy. He doesn't have a lot of money, but he does what he loves. He's writing a book on the history of our region. He's in touch with former students who adore him. And unlike my children, he's never asked me for money. Winston nodded understandingly. "And you want to leave him everything?" "Almost everything. The house, most of my savings. I'd like to leave a small amount for the grandchildren's education account. They're not to blame for their parents' behavior." Winston wrote it down, then looked up from the paper. "Edmund, I have to ask, are you sure this isn't just a reaction to Sunday's quarrel? Your children, despite their behavior, are still your children." I looked out the window. In the square, a young mother was wheeling a stroller with her baby, occasionally bending over to adjust the blanket. a common scene of parental care that now seemed as distant as another planet to me. This isn't just a reaction to a fight, Winston. It's the result of years of disappointment. I've spent my life helping my children, paid for their education, even though Loretta and I had to scrimp on everything. When Priscilla got married the first time, I paid for the whole wedding. When she and her first husband decided to buy a house, I gave them money for the down payment. I've helped Sebastian countless times. His car breaks down. The company he works for is on the verge of bankruptcy. And each time, I thought I was investing not so much in their financial well-being, but in our relationship. Silly, isn't it? Winston listened silently, not interrupting. And you know what the most frustrating part was? I continued. I've never once received a sincere thank you, just more requests, like it was the order of the day, that a father should be saving his grown children all the time. And now, when I refuse to fulfill their whim to sell the house I've lived in all my life, they show their true colors. I understand your bitterness, Winston nodded, but I still want you to be sure of your decision. Changing the will is a serious step that could have far-reaching consequences for the whole family. I'm absolutely sure, I said firmly. My brother Alfred deserves this inheritance far more than my children. He has never asked me for anything, though he has lived modestly all his life. He is an honest, hard-working man who values relationships, not money. And if my house goes to him, I know he'll keep the memory of Loretta and me alive. Winston nodded, accepting my decision. Good. I'll prepare all the necessary paperwork. It will take a little time to draw up the new will properly, taking into account all the legal aspects. Let's meet on Friday and you can sign it. Great, I was relieved, as if a heavy weight was beginning to lift off my shoulders. Thank you, Winston. You're welcome, Ed. That's what old friends are for. We discussed a few more details. The power of attorney in the event of incapacity. I also decided to appoint Alfred, funeral arrangements, a modest ceremony, no frills, and other legal formalities. By the time we finished, it was around noon. Would you like to have lunch together? Winston suggested it. There's a nice Italian restaurant nearby. I'd love to, I agreed. I could use the distraction. Over lunch, we talked about the past, the plant, about co-workers, many of whom were no longer alive, about how Newtown had changed over the decades. Winston talked about his grandchildren, showed me pictures of them on his phone. I was happy for my friend, but I couldn't help but feel a prick of envy. He had a real family that loved him. I had kids who only saw me as a wallet. You know, Ed, Winston said as we finished lunch, I've been meaning to tell you for a long time. You were a great father. I remember how you were always rushing home from the plant, giving up overtime to spend time with your kids, how proud you were of their accomplishments. If your kids don't appreciate that now, it's their loss, not yours. I felt a lump come up to my throat. All these years I'd blamed myself for not raising my kids well enough, for making a mistake somewhere, for making them grow up like this. Winston's words were a balm to that old wound. Thanks, man. It means a lot to me. We parted outside the restaurant, agreeing to meet on Friday for the will signing. I decided to walk home despite the drizzle. I needed time to think it over again. As I passed the playground, I stopped, watching the kids who, despite the wet weather, were having fun climbing on the slides and swings under the supervision of their parents. I had once watched Priscilla and Sebastian in the same way, anxiously and proudly following their first independent steps. Where and when was the turning point that made them such strangers? Perhaps when Loretta died. She'd always been the bond in our family, the glue that held us together. Or even earlier, when they grew up and left home, immersed in their own worries and problems. Or maybe they had always been like that. I just didn't want to see it. Thinking about it, I didn't notice how I reached the house. I opened the gate, walked along the path strewn with fallen leaves, and went up to the porch. There was an envelope on the doorstep, Someone had slipped it under the door. I picked it up and saw Priscilla's neat handwriting. Inside was an apology card. "Daddy, I'm sorry for my behavior on Sunday. I was out of line. Let's talk calmly when you're ready. Love, Pris." No mention of the house or selling, just an apology. I put the card on the hallway table. Too little, too late. If Priscilla thinks she can make up for what happened with a simple card, she doesn't know me very well. In the evening, I decided to call Alfred. We hadn't spoken in a couple of weeks, and I missed his calm, judicious voice. "Ed? What a pleasant surprise." Alfred always sounded as if he was really glad to hear from me. "Hi, Al. How are you doing? How's the book?" "I'm making progress. I found some interesting archival documents about the first settlers in our region. How are you? You sound tired." I sigh. Alfred was always perceptive. "It's been a rough couple of days. I had a fight with the kids." "What's that about, if it's no secret?" "They want me to sell the house and move into an apartment, and I refuse." Alfred was quiet for a few seconds. "I understand. The house is more than just walls to you, it's memories." "Exactly," I exclaimed. "Why can't they understand that?" "Because it's just real estate to them, Ed. An asset. They haven't lived there all their lives like you have. They don't remember every scratch on the door jamb, every dent in the banister." We talked for another hour or so. I didn't mention the new will. I didn't want to embarrass my brother. But after talking to him, I felt I'd made the right decision. Alfred deserved that inheritance, even if he didn't know about it. The next 2 days passed in a strange calm. I worked in the garden, preparing it for winter, read, watched old movies on TV. Sebastian called again, but I didn't pick up. Instead, I sent him a text saying I wanted to talk to him and Priscilla next Tuesday. I needed to let them know my decision in person, not through a lawyer. On Friday, I put on my best suit again and went to Winston's office. He met me with a folder of documents in his hands. "It's done, Ed. I've made a will according to your wishes. Here, take a look at it." I read every page carefully. The house and most of my savings went to Alfred, and a small amount was earmarked for the grandchildren's education accounts. Priscilla and Sebastian were not mentioned at all. "That's right," I said when I finished reading. "Where do I sign?" Winston pointed to the lines at the end of the document. "Here and here, and on the bottom of each page. I've called 2 witnesses to make it legal." Winston's secretary and another lawyer from his firm entered the office. They watched in silence as I signed signature after signature, officially disinheriting my children. Strangely, I felt no regret or gloating, just fatigue and relief. When everything was signed, Winston shook my hand. "Congratulations, Ed. Your will is now legally protected. I'll mail you a copy of the will in a sealed envelope." "Thank you, Winston, for everything." As I left the office, I felt strangely light. It was as if I'd been relieved of a burden I'd been carrying for years without realizing it. The decision had been made, the papers signed. Now all that was left was to tell the children. I woke up at first light as usual, but today I felt strange. At first there was a slight heaviness in my chest, which I wrote off as indigestion. I took a pill and continued to do my chores. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the discomfort increased and shortness of breath was added. When I tried to climb the stairs to get a book from the bedroom, I had to stop halfway. I was short of breath. I sat down on the stairs, trying to catch my breath. Something was wrong. My left arm was starting to feel numb, and the pain in my chest was sharper, like someone had put a heavy stone there. I remembered how Loretta had described how she'd felt before she'd passed out 5 years ago. "Like an elephant sat on my chest," she'd said. It was impossible to slow down. I struggled downstairs, got to the phone, and dialed 911. "Emergency services. What's your emergency?" A woman's voice answered. "I think I'm having a heart attack," I said, surprised at the calmness in my voice. "I'm 77 years old and live alone." The operator asked about my symptoms, told me to take aspirin, to stay on the line. I sat in the chair, answering questions as the pain in my chest intensified. Soon I heard a siren getting louder and louder until it went silent right in front of the house. The paramedics acted quickly and professionally. They took my blood pressure, pulse, hooked up some instruments. I memorized bits and pieces of their conversation. Looks like a heart attack. Blood pressure 90/60. Pulse is irregular. You need to be hospitalized immediately. They helped me lie down on a stretcher and carried me out of the house. I remember looking at my house through the back window of the ambulance as we drove away. For some reason I thought, will I ever see it again? The next few hours blended into a kaleidoscope of faces, voices, bright lights, and pungent odors. A hospital corridor, an emergency operating room, tests, IVs, monitors. "Mr. Holbrook, you had a heart attack," said an elderly doctor with graying temples when I was finally in a private room. "But you were lucky. You called an ambulance in time and we were able to prevent serious damage to your heart muscle. We put in a stent to dilate the blocked artery. Now you need rest and observation." How long am I going to be here?" My voice sounded hoarse and weak. "At least a week. Then we'll see." "Do you have any relatives to notify?" I thought of Priscilla and Sebastian. In spite of everything, they must know. "Yes, my children. Their contacts are on the phone. The nurse helped me find the numbers and the doctor called them himself, explaining the situation. Then he came back to me. They both said they'd come right away. Get some rest, Mr. Holbrook." I fell into a restless sleep, interrupted by visits from the nurses. Priscilla and Sebastian were talking to the doctor at the door. "Stable, but needs monitoring," the doctor was saying. "Given his age, we want to be careful." Of course, Priscilla's voice sounded worried. "Can we see him?" "Yes, but not for long. He needs to rest." They entered the room. Priscilla was in a business suit, probably coming straight from work. Sebastian was in jeans and a sweater, looking wrinkled and worried. "Daddy." Priscilla came to the bed and took my hand. "How you scared us." "Hi, kids," I smiled weakly. "Sorry for disturbing you." "What are you talking about?" Sebastian stood up on the other side of the bed. "How are you feeling?" "I've been better. But the doctor said I'll pull through." "Of course you will." Priscilla squeezed my hand. "You're a tough nut to crack." We talked for a few more minutes. They asked about the symptoms, about what the doctor had said. I answered briefly. My strength was fading fast, but then the conversation took an unexpected turn. "Dad," Priscilla began cautiously, "where are your papers? Insurance? Medical records?" "In the chest in the living room," I answered. "Why do you need it?" "Well, it is necessary to provide the hospital for registration. Also, where are the spare keys to the house? We'll need to get you some clothes, pajamas, toiletries." I looked at her closely. I could see the worry in her eyes, but there was something else there. Calculation? "The keys are on the hook in the hallway. But you don't have to worry about things. I won't be here long." "Anyway, Dad," Sebastian interjected, "you'll be more comfortable in your own clothes. And by the way, I think we should move some of your things over to Pris's for the time being. When you're discharged, you shouldn't be alone. That's it. They didn't waste any time." The heart attack was a convenient excuse for them to start relocating. "I'll be fine on my own," I said firmly. "And while I'm here, please call Winston Price. His number's in my phone, too." "Winston? Why?" Priscilla frowned. "He's a friend of mine and a lawyer. I need to talk to him." Sebastian and Priscilla looked at each other. "Dad, you need peace, not business talk," Sebastian said softly. "Let's wait until you feel better." "No." I felt the anger give me strength. "Call him now. Tell him I'm at the hospital and I want to see him. It's important." Okay, Priscilla held up her hands in a conciliatory gesture. "I'll call him." She left the room with my phone, leaving Sebastian and me alone. "Dad," he lowered his voice, "don't you think this is a sign?" "What happened?" "Maybe we should reconsider the house." "Sebastian." I looked him straight in the eye. Let's not talk about this right now. I'm tired. He opened his mouth to object, but Priscilla returned. I talked to Winston. He said he'd be here tomorrow morning. Okay, I nodded. Thank you. Dad, why don't you tell me what you need him for? Priscilla wouldn't stop. Was it something with the papers? The will? You'll find out tomorrow. I closed my eyes, showing that the conversation was over. They sat for a while, discussing in a half-whisper who would be on duty at the hospital and when, then said goodbye and left. I heard Priscilla tell the nurse in the hallway that they were going to stop by the house to pick up my things. I'm sure they were planning on going through my papers in the trunk at the same time. Well, let them look. There's no new will in there. The next morning, I felt a little better. The pain in my chest had subsided and my breathing was easier. The doctor examined me and was satisfied with my progress. About 10 o'clock in the morning, Winston came in. He brought a bouquet of flowers and a box of chocolates. Edmund, old friend, he shook my hand. How you frightened me. I'm sorry I dragged you out here, I said, but it's important. Of course. Winston sat down in the chair next to the bed. Your daughter said you had something urgent to do with me. Yes. Did you bring what I asked for? Winston patted the inside pocket of his jacket. It's all here. A copy of the new will, just like you asked for. But, Ed, are you sure you want to do this now? You just had a heart attack. That's exactly why I want to do it now, I said firmly. If something happens to me, I want it to be clear and official. Priscilla and Sebastian need to know my decision. At the beginning of the 4th, Priscilla and Sebastian showed up. They brought a bag with my things, fruit and fresh magazines. How are you feeling, Daddy? Priscilla kissed me on the cheek. You're looking better. Thank you, I do feel better, I replied. Thanks for the stuff. You're welcome. Sebastian set the bag by the bed. Pris and I stopped by your house last night. Checked to make sure everything was okay. We watered the flowers and took out the trash. And did you check my ID? I asked them directly. They were embarrassed. Well, we just wanted to find your medical records and insurance. Priscilla began to justify herself. For the hospital. At that moment, Winston entered the room, as we had agreed. Good afternoon, everyone, he said. Winston? Priscilla looked at him in surprise. You were already here this morning. Why did you come back? At your father's request, Winston answered calmly. We have important business that cannot be delayed. What business? Sebastian frowned. Papa has just had a heart attack. He needs to rest. It won't take long, I said, and it concerns both of you directly. Winston pulled an envelope and papers out of his jacket pocket. Edmund has asked me to formally read his new will in your presence, he began in a formal tone. New will? Priscilla straightened up. When did you have time to make a new will, Papa? Last week, I answered. After our memorable dinner. Sebastian turned pale. What's in it? You'll find out, I nodded to Winston. Please read it out. Winston put on his glasses, coughed, and began to read. I, Edmund James Holbrook, being of sound mind and sound judgment, do hereby express my last will and testament as to the disposition of my estate at my death. He was reading standard legal text, but I could see Priscilla and Sebastian tense up when it came to the distribution of property. All of my real property, including the house at 15 Maple Street, Newtown, with all of its contents and all of my cash in bank accounts, stocks, bonds, and other financial assets, except as specifically provided below, I bequeath to my brother, Alfred Thomas Holbrook. What? Priscilla jumped up from her chair. Alfred? Your brother, with whom you have been out of touch for 30 years. We reconnected 2 years ago, I replied calmly. And, unlike some, he never tried to force me out of my own home. Winston continued reading. I also allocate the sum of $20,000 to the educational accounts of my grandchildren, Elliot and Daisy Baxter, which will be available to them upon their 18th birthday and may be used solely for college or university tuition. What about us? Sebastian asked hoarsely. "What are you leaving us?" Winston looked at him over his glasses. "Your names are not mentioned in the will, Mr. Holbrook." Priscilla made a strange sound, something between a sob and a groan. Her face turned white, her eyes widened. She staggered and suddenly sank to the floor, unconscious. "Pris!" Sebastian rushed to his sister. "Nurse, we need help." A nurse ran into the room, followed by a doctor. They quickly brought Priscilla to her senses by giving her a sniff of ammonia and applying a cold compress to her forehead. "What happened?" the doctor asked, helping Priscilla into the chair. "I just felt sick," she mumbled, "from overexertion." "And the shock when she found out she wouldn't get a dime of my inheritance," I added. "You can't do this," Sebastian glared at me fiercely. "We are your children." "Children who only see me as a hindrance and a source of inheritance," I replied calmly. "Children who can't wait for me to die so they can sell the house they grew up in." "It's not fair," Priscilla exclaimed, still pale but recovered. "We just cared for you. We wanted you to be comfortable." "Did we? I thought you wanted to solve your financial problems at my expense." "I'll contest that will." Sebastian clenched his fists. "You wrote it under stress, after a fight. Any court would find you incompetent." "I don't think so," Winston interjected. The will had been drawn up in accordance with the rules. Edmund had undergone a medical examination before signing it, which confirmed his full capacity. There are witness statements, a videotape of the signing procedure. It's all perfectly legal. This is just revenge for that dinner. For one stupid fight, you disinherit your own children. "Not for a fight," I shook my head. "For a lifetime of relationships in which I've been nothing but an ATM machine for you. For all the times you came to me only when you needed money. For the fact that even now, when I'm in the hospital after a heart attack, you're more interested in my papers and house keys than in my health." "That's not true," Priscilla exclaimed with tears in her eyes. "We love you, maybe, in our own way, but not as children should love their father's children." Sebastian looked at me with implacable fury. "You'll regret this," he said through gritted teeth. "We'll find a way to contest the will. Your brother won't get a dime." They headed for the exit. Priscilla turned around at the door, her face wet with tears. "You know what's hurtful, Daddy? That you don't believe in our love. That you think we only want your money." "And isn't that true?" I asked tiredly. "When was the last time you came to me just to talk, spend time together, without asking for money, without talking about selling the house?" She didn't answer, just shook her head and followed her brother out. "Well," Winston sighed, "that was dramatic." "I didn't expect Priscilla to faint," I admitted, "but otherwise everything went according to plan." That evening, when Winston had gone and the room was quiet, I decided to call Alfred. I wanted to hear a familiar voice that would demand nothing from me but an honest conversation. "Ed, what's the matter?" Alfred knew right away something was wrong. "I'm in the hospital, Al. I've had a heart attack." "Oh my God, how bad is it?" "Not too bad. The doctors say I'll pull through." "Oh, thank God. Do you need anything? Should I come over?" "No, you don't want to come halfway across the country. I just wanted to hear your voice." "What about the kids? Are they with you?" I didn't say anything. "They came. But, we haven't had a very good relationship lately." "I'm sorry, Ed. Family conflicts are the most painful. We talked some more, about his book, about the weather, about old times. Not a word about money, the house, the inheritance. He didn't even know about the new will, and I decided not to say anything yet. Right now, it was important just to know that there was someone who cared about me simply because of who I was, not because of what I had." When we finished talking, it was already dark outside the window. I lay in the semi-dark room, listening to the muffled sounds of the hospital, and thought about my life, about Loretta, about the kids, about home, about my brother, about the decisions that had brought me here. I felt no schadenfreude at the children's reaction to the will, only sadness that my own children had turned out to be such strangers. But I was sure I had done the right thing. The house Loretta and I had so lovingly built deserved a better fate than to be sold to pay off Sebastian's loans or to pay for my grandchildren's college. And maybe someday, when I'm gone, Priscilla and Sebastian will realize that the most valuable inheritance is not money or real estate, but love and respect, something that can't be bought or sold.